One thing that I think I constantly hit, sorry, my name's Andrew. I'm the clinical applications intern. Um, it's a lot of, we have a lot of data, right? There's a long list of orders, a long list of problems, a long list of a lot of things. And so constantly the thing that I kind of get stuck on and then I have to think about a lot is how do you lay out all that large amounts of information for the user to get the most important aspects of it or be able to pick from a long list of things of that kind. I think I constantly struggle with.
And is this about the forms?
Yes. Yeah.
So sometimes within forms, we have to display a lot of information. And I think, Andrew, are you saying how do you display like a ton of information in one place without being too overwhelming, or can you clarify?
Yeah, I think there's different scenarios, right? One could be I have a long list of options for somebody to pick, and sometimes the drop-down menu is just so limited that there's just a huge scroll bar for all the different lists of hospitals that we have to pick or something like that. Or just there's a long list of problems in the patient's chart that we need to show to the user, to the provider, and how do we lay that out. Just things of that kind, how we can organize all those big data in the forms.
Can you hear me? I think I cut out for a minute.
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Sorry, I'm back. I see. So if you have, and are you talking about like if there's errors that they need to correct, for example?
No, not errors, but just like a list of items. Sorry, when he said problems, he meant like diagnoses in a patient's chart.
So what? Yeah. So there is the option to use like a multi-select, and so you're saying you use these, but it's just really, really long, or do you use like a combo box where it's like a single drop down that gets really long?
Yeah, basically.
Both of those, or checkbox, like a checkbox list. But then the list, if the list of things is like 25 items, 30 items. How do you display that in a way that's still accessible, but it doesn't take up the entire screen?
Right. Okay. Yeah. So there's a control that I used to use a lot that we used to call it an accumulator, which was basically it's a side-by-side. I'm trying to think if I have an example. Maybe I can build one quick. It would be basically kind of like two of the, so one of the problems with using a multi-select control label like this, when you can select, so if you're selecting multiple items, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can have a checkbox that's really, really long, a checkbox list that's very, very long. The advantages are that it's people are able to see everything that they select, but the disadvantage is that it's very, very long. A multi-select one is another option where you can kind of condense it and use the scroll bar so that it's not as long. The challenge is that, which I'm sure you know, is that you kind of lose track of which ones are checked, and then you also need to have the dexterity to do control or command select. And if you accidentally unselect it, then you unselect all of it and you lose your progress. So another option is to have side-by-side ones and have something, very simple version would be something like this, where you can add them one by one from one list to another, and then they let's see. And then they get added to here. So this is all the options, and you would call it something else. And this is the selected options. And so what they would do is they would select something here, they would click it here, and then it would get added to here. And so that way you can keep track of them, and then this would build up while this one, either gets, get removed or whatever. And so that's kind of a nice way of keeping track of it. There's also some other ones where it's built into here, and it's maybe it's something like this, so that you can click on them and they would get selected, and then you would even have the option to remove them. And so there are a few options out there, but my guess is that that's something that you would have to customize. But that might be a widget that you would explore building, or you could identify certain types of controls that people have trouble with, and try to come up with some other design solutions to solve them. Does that, like, is that, as an example, is that helpful?
Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Yeah, we used to call this an accumulator, but I think that there's a different name for it. But that would be an example where you have lots of options that you need to select, and you want to keep track of them. And these can be good ways of dealing with that. And was there another example along the same lines that you were describing? Or is there something else that I could try to kind of whip up quickly that might be helpful?
Yeah, I guess to even go deeper with that example, we have a list of order options that a user can pick, that accumulates to a working list, and then there's another list for just the whole patient's chart where it's just a long list of standing orders. And so there's three lists, right? The option list, the working list, or the selected or list, and the basically the standing orders that haven't fallen off yet. Am I making sense?
I mean, I'm not as familiar with the terminology, but is this something that they might see in a table, for example, in a data table?
Yeah, table would be one way to see that, yeah.
Okay. How is the information initially presented to them? In a single, like, vertical list like this? Or how does it look now? And is it side by side or on top of each other, vertically stacked?
Right now we're recreating the form, but right now it looks like a long list of checkboxes. So the multi-select that you mentioned. Yeah.
I forgot that there's another option where you can have you can put a checkbox list inside of a scroll bar. That's something that I've seen before that kind of helps with this problem of losing track of what you have selected, because it uses the standard checkboxes that people are familiar with, but it puts them in inside of a scroll box to save space. But it sounds like some of these things might be good as a table, possibly. I know that when I was working in EHR, we used tables a lot. And let me show you maybe a couple of examples here. I have one for data tables here. And one thing that's nice about them is that it can be very clear how to do a multi-select. So let's see if I have an example of, yeah, something like this where you have a list of data and then you have a list of checkboxes. And then once these are selected, you can then have a button that will perform an action on all of them at once. You're not repeating the same, you're kind of building up the list by using the checkboxes. And then once you're ready to do something, you can use a button to say, perform an action on them, or maybe then this gets then populated in another table or something like this. Or you probably don't want to use one of these like tree tables, but there are a few other options where you have kind of more complex UI elements embedded inside of a table, or you use this expand and collapse if there's a lot of data and you don't want to show all of it at once. So there are a few different different options, and then there's a few articles that I've linked here about different types of data table design, for example. And then I believe actually we just wrote an article recently about data tables. Yes, designing effective data tables here, showing different options and different layouts. So there's some information that you could look at there. Data tables are good because they're a good way to put a lot of information in a smaller space. It sounds like maybe you don't need so much the columns so much, but at least having a, you can have a data table with only 2 columns or something like that. But one thing that can be nice about them is that it can be intuitive to then have some kind of action button associated with the table, so that you do some selecting of certain things and then you click a button and something happens. So that might be a good place to look for patterns that you can then reuse. Is that helpful at all?
Yep, that's definitely really helpful. I think I can use something like that. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really like this articles page. There's a lot of really interesting, helpful things to read. I'll probably spend some time and read through all of them.
Good. Yeah, and a lot of people have really dived deeply into all of this stuff. It's just a matter of finding it. So I think that we've tried to curate some of our favorite resources about these things.
Cool. I don't really have any other questions. I don't know if Rachel or Grace or Andrew, if you have anything else. Grace?
Yeah, I have a quick question. I'm also an intern and I'm just kind of learning how to build forms right now. But is it possible to like import like an already built form from like a form of image or a screenshot to put it like here right away, like on screen?
What you can do, actually, you can import any comma separated value data into our data table. So if you have some data so you can't import a form, but you can import some data maybe if it's easier, or if you have access to some information, a certain amount of information in Excel, for example, or Google Sheets, if you export it as a CSV file and paste that into here, that will be pasted in, that will build this form or this data table. But there isn't a way to import a form, but you can copy and paste any regular text data and it will be copied in. You can also import images if you say have an image of a form that you want to recreate and you just want to see it on the screen. That's another one of the suggestions that we have in this article about how to start a project, which is let me scroll down to the bottom, is find inspiration elsewhere. So in this example here, we are creating something where we wanted to have kind of a project history, and we took a screenshot from Dropbox that already does a similar problem and just put it side by side and kind of like use that for inspiration inside the wireframing project. or even, using some combination of wireframes and existing screenshots to kind of show the connection between things rather than recreating something. So, when you're using your wireframes, definitely think of them as just kind of, your workspace, and bring in text and draw diagrams, bring in words, use arrows, bring in images, paste in data. It doesn't have to just be things that it doesn't all have to be user interface elements that you're creating inside the application. Feel free to use it kind of more like a digital whiteboard or something like that, or your desk or something where you're just combining things from different places and different types onto the screen. That can be helpful. And yeah, you can just drag and drop images into here or import them. So that can be useful as well. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Yeah, honestly, I think my biggest takeaway is that we're doing a lot of things right, because a lot of things that you're talking through we're kind of already doing. So that's encouraging takeaway. But yeah, no, this articles page is super helpful.
Okay, good. But yeah, that's why I was asking so many questions in the beginning, because I was really trying to get at where are the real challenges and the real struggles. And your answer to most of them was that you were doing them pretty well for the most part. So it sounds like there's some things that you can optimize a little bit, but the fact that your users are fairly happy with the forms, and you have a lot of knowledge, and the system really well, and I think you are doing a lot of things right. So I think you're in pretty good shape. But yeah, I'm happy to help with trying to help you guys design forms a little bit better and maybe a little bit more quickly or efficiently in Balsamiq. But it sounds like you've got a good team there.
Cool. Well, unless Rachel or Andrew and Grace have anything else. Yeah, thanks for your time. This was helpful.
Good, I'm glad.
Yeah, we appreciate it. Thanks. Sure. It's nice to also just get outside of our box sometimes and talk to other people who do this work that aren't in our 4-person team. So we appreciate the perspective.
I hear you. Yeah, and I'll send you a follow-up email with a few links to some articles that I mentioned, and I could probably dig up a few more as well. And I'll share this project with you as well, so you can just poke around in it.
Yeah, it seems like you guys have a pretty robust library of things for us to read through. So
yeah, informed design has been a challenge for a very long time. So there's been a lot. You guys are definitely not the first people to be struggling with them.
Sure.
Alrighty, well, yeah, feel free to email me if there's any questions you think of later.
Great. Thank you very much. Have a good weekend.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome.
Bye.
Bye.